All right, let's jump right in. When you think about the book of Joshua, what comes to mind? Probably epic battles, right? Jericho's walls tumbling down. It feels like this grand military history, and it is. But what if I told you that's just the surface? That hidden in the original Hebrew, there's a completely different story, a story beneath the story that changes everything.
So here's the deal. The common view? Yeah, it's a book of battles, military conquest. But the hidden meaning? Oh, it's so much more. It's a prophetic shadow, a preview of the gospel, and really, at its core, an incredible story about God's faithfulness. And that's what we're going to do here. We're going to shift our focus from this column on the left to the one on the right.
And this right here, this is the central idea that unlocks the whole thing. It's this constant theme of what you think is this is actually that. We're going to see it pop up again and again. What looks like just a historical event is actually a deep, profound spiritual picture. Okay, so where do we start? Well, let's begin with the man himself, the leader at the very center of it all, Joshua. Now, this is where things get really interesting. His name. In the original Hebrew, it's not just Joshua, it's Yehoshua. And that name isn't random, it has a very specific meaning: Yahweh saves. Hold on to that, because if that name rings a bell, well, it absolutely should. Because Yahoshua is the very same name the angel told Mary to name her son, Jesus, or Yeshua in Hebrew. And no way is that a coincidence. This is our first huge clue that Joshua isn't just a general. He's a living, breathing, prophetic signpost. I mean, just look at how his mission is a perfect shadow of Jesus' work. Joshua leads the people into the physical rest of the promised land. Jesus leads us into spiritual rest. Joshua defeats the enemies they can see. Jesus defeats the ultimate enemies of sin and death. Joshua gives them a physical inheritance, and it's all pointing forward to the spiritual inheritance Jesus provides. It's incredible. Joshua is the shadow, Jesus is the reality. And you can see this shift so clearly when you compare the two big water crossings. The Red Sea crossing with Moses, that was all about escape. It was a story of survival, of getting out of slavery. But the Jordan River crossing with Joshua, that's totally different. It's about entering their destiny, stepping into their purpose. It's the huge leap from just surviving to actually taking hold of the promise. All right, so let's take this idea and apply it to probably the most famous story in the whole book, the fall of Jericho.
We all know the story, right? But was it really about a brilliant military strategy, or was something else going on?
I mean, just think about the instructions God gives them. Seriously, from a military point of view, this plan is, well, it's nuts. No battering rams, no siege towers, not a single attack. Just marching, blowing some trumpets, and then shouting? Come on, this was never a military strategy.
So here's the big reveal. Israel's strategy wasn't warfare at all. It was worship. Their weapon was obedience. By just doing this strange thing God told them to do, they were making a prophetic declaration. This city already belongs to God. So the victory wasn't about their strength. It was a divine demolition. It was heaven literally fighting on Earth's soil.
But hang on, it gets even cooler. Our English translations usually say the walls fell down flat. But the original Hebrew is way more specific and, honestly, way more mind-blowing. It says the walls fell beneath themselves. So what on earth does that mean? It means they didn't crumble outward into a giant mess of rubble. Nope, they sank straight down into the ground. And in doing so, they created a perfect ramp for the Israelites to just walk right in. I mean, think about that. God didn't just get rid of the obstacle, he turned the obstacle into the very path forward. Wow. And the book is just packed with these kinds of powerful signs, physical things that point to a much deeper spiritual truth about God's covenant. Okay. Let's talk about Rahab. Her story is amazing. She starts out as a total outsider, right? A broken past, not even part of Israel. But with just one act of faith, protecting those spies, her entire destiny flips. She's not just saved, she gets grafted into Israel's royal line. She becomes an ancestor of King David, and even ends up in the lineage of Jesus himself. It's just this stunning picture of how God's plan works through the most unlikely people. And that scarlet cord she hangs from her window? You might think it's just a secret signal, but it's so much more than that. Think back to the Passover in Egypt. What was the sign of protection? Scarlet blood over the door. This cord is a direct echo of that. It's this powerful symbol of a household being covered by blood, saved through faith. It's not just a rope, it's a prophetic sign. And what about those 12 stones they pulled out of the Jordan River? It's easy to think of them as just souvenirs, a little memorial, but in Hebrew culture, they were way more important. They were covenant witnesses. Think of it like a signed, notarized legal document. These stones were the physical proof, the hard evidence for every generation to come that said, God keeps his promises, period.
And all of this brings us to the real heart of the entire book. It was never really about the fighting. It's all about the fulfillment.
You know those chapters in the middle, chapters 13 to 21? Let's be honest, most of us probably skim or even skip them. It feels like boring geography, just a bunch of maps and lists. But here's a secret. That's not the boring part, that's the climax. It's the detailed receipt, the prophetic proof of inheritance. Each tribe gets their specific, God-given destiny. It shows this incredible, careful intentionality of God. And it all builds up to this one powerful verse that's basically the thesis statement for the entire book. Joshua 21:45 says, "Not one word of all the good promises that the Lord had made to the house of Israel had failed. All came to pass." I mean, that's it. That's the whole point right there.
So if you take away one thing, let it be this. The book of Joshua isn't really a war book. It's a promise fulfillment book. The entire story is designed from start to finish to prove one thing. God is absolutely 100% faithful to his word. And that leaves us with something to think about. The story of Jericho isn't just a cool historical event. It shows us a God who doesn't just knock down our obstacles, but who can actually turn them into our pathways forward. So the question for all of us is, if we really believe that God is that faithful, that he keeps his promises, how does that change the way we look at the walls in our own lives?